What if I told you that the person you'd mourned for nearly half a century was living a whole other life building homes under a different name, fathering children you'd never met, and carrying memories of you in a worn leather journal? Imagine opening a plain brown package on your porch and finding a hand-carved box stamped with a postmark from Guadalajara, Mexico. Inside, a yellowed letter unfolds a story so astonishing it bends everything you thought you knew about love loss and the roads we travel when our lives derail. I want you to picture this: the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over a quiet New England coastline, gulls circling overhead waves lacing the sand with foam. On a weathered wooden porch, a woman with silver-streaked hair and a gentle smile, almost 80 years old, holds a small package wrapped in too many layers of brown paper and tape. Her name is Geraldine Whitaker, though most of the world still called her Miss Jerry, even decades after she'd married. For 47 years, she believed her fiancé James had vanished into thin air. For 47 years, she nursed a heartbreak so deep it felt like a missing limb. And here at last was a key to unlock all those unanswered questions. This is the moment our story begins, not in the flash of a romance, nor the safe confines of a soda fountain counter, but in the suspended silence between a woman's breath and the tear-crackling opening of a mysterious delivery. It's the kind of cinematic moment you'd expect from a streaming service drama close-ups of trembling fingers, the creak of porch boards, the soaring swell of music, just at the edge of perception. But it's real, and it's waiting for us to lean in and listen. Because this isn't just a story about one small town in Vermont, or about a summer romance gone awry. It's about how love etches itself into our bones, how memory and identity can fracture and reassemble, and how even when we think the book is closed, life might surprise us with an epilogue. Over the next few minutes, I'll take you from that quiet porch all the way back to a soda fountain in Oakage, Vermont, in the heat of July 1965, through a proposal on a windswept ridge, a disappearance so baffling that even the FBI got involved, two lives rebuilt in different cities, and finally that package from Mexico that changed everything. But before we plunge into memories, diagnoses, missing person reports, and love letters tied with ribbon, let's frame the real questions at the heart of this tale. Questions you might already be wrestling with in your own life. What does it mean to lose someone you love, not just to death, but to the unknown? We've all felt that ache when a friendship dissolves or a relationship ends. But what if the person you love simply vanished, leaving behind only a bloodstain and a car in a ditch? How do you grieve for someone you can't even mourn properly? How does our identity change when memory fails us? Head trauma erased James's past, but it didn't erase his longing for home or for Geraldine. We'll explore how the self can splinter, how a man can wake up with no recollection of his life, and yet carry a heart full of love he can't name. When does closure become compassion? If the living have built new lives, new families, new roots, is it fair to uproot them for the sake of a lost past? Where do you draw the line between your own need for answers and the peace others have forged in your absence? To help us navigate these questions, we'll look at a real-life parallel that sounds like it was ripped from a thriller. The story of Benjamin Kyle, an American man found unconscious behind a dumpster in Georgia in 2004, with no ID and no memory of who he was. For years, he was John Doe, a living ghost. It wasn't until DNA testing and a grassroots search revealed his identity that he could reclaim his name and start to fill in the blanks. Kyle's ordeal reminds us how fragile our sense of self can be, and how modern technology can sometimes piece together mysteries that once felt unsolvable. And here's a common myth we'll pull apart: the notion that summer love always ends in heartbreak. You've heard it in movies, songs, maybe even your own friends' cautionary tales. Don't get too attached, he'll be gone come September. Well, as you're about to see, sometimes summer love is just the opening chapter of a story that stretches across continents and decades. We'll contrast the boilerplate, one-dimensional fling narrative with the real, complicated, enduring affection that survives misfortune, memory loss, and years of silence. So what can you expect to take away from this video? By the end, you'll learn not just a single woman's incredible journey, but universal lessons about holding on and letting go, about honoring past heartbreaks without letting them derail your future. You'll see how to tell a love story on camera with sensory details that breathe life into nostalgia, how to handle the maddening gaps in a cold case narrative with respect and transparency, and how to craft an unfinished chapter in your own story so that it becomes a springboard instead of a dead end. If you've ever wondered how to revisit old wounds without reopening them, how to build new love on the foundation of old loss, or how to keep faith when closure seems beyond reach, you're in the right place. And if you've ever held a dried-up flower from a long-ago prom, or saved a crumpled letter in a shoebox, or let go of a dream that once meant everything, you'll feel a kinship with Geraldine as she unwraps the truth decades too late. All right, the porch light is flickering. The waves are whispering against the shore, and that carved wooden box sits open at Jerry's feet. It's time to step back in time to a place where soda fountains were the social media of their day, where the weight of a father's pride could lift you sky high, and where one chance encounter could change two lives forever. Oakage, Vermont might look like an unassuming dot on a map, two streets, a white steepled church, and a handful of clapboard houses nestled against rolling hills. Yet for Geraldine, May Harrington, this humble spot was the entire world. A place where everyone knew your middle name, where a wave from the porch swing was as significant as a national headline, and where the pharmacy at the heart of Main Street was both social hub and sanctuary. Imagine stepping through the green-painted door of Harrington's pharmacy in the summer of 1958. The air inside smelled of minty ointment and cherry soda syrup. Sunlight poured through the tall front window, catching motes of dust as they danced above the worn linoleum floor. Behind the polished wood counter stood a dozen spinning red vinyl stools, each one already occupied by neighbors catching up on gossip or seeking comfort in a vanilla phosphate after a hard day's work. This wasn't a place you visited just to pick up a prescription. It was where you heard the town's troubles, celebrations, and whispered secrets. For 8-year-old Geraldine Jerry, to all but her most formal friends, that pharmacy was her training ground in community building. While other kids her age learned video games or watched television, she learned to make cherry cokes that would steam in the midday heat, to ring up sales on a gleaming cash register, and to dispense empathy like it was medicine. She watched her daddy, Richard Harrington, greet each customer with the same steady kindness, offering a sympathetic ear for Mrs. Collins, whose husband had passed that morning, or a cheerful joke for Mr. Finley, a World War II veteran who favored the seat by the window every Wednesday. This environment shaped Geraldine's character in two profound ways. First, she internalized a deep sense of responsibility. From the moment she could reach the nickel jar of Jawbreakers, she became part of the town's support system. When her mother's migraines turned her mother's bedroom into a darkened retreat, Geraldine didn't flinch. She simply stepped into her mother's absence, closing the curtains and lighting lamps in the parlor so visitors wouldn't notice her mother's emptiness. A small-town child might seem sheltered by familiarity, but it was also a crucible privacy. Evaporated personal troubles became communal stories, and each act of service doubled as a lesson in resilience. Second, Oakage taught Geraldine to value authenticity over pretense. In the Harrington pharmacy uniforms were plaster-starched white coats not designer labels. Advice was handed over the counter in plain language, not glossy packaging. And behind every customer's polite smile lurked a human story of struggle or hope. No one pretended to be more than they were, and that honesty became Geraldine's lodestar in later years as she navigated heartache, memory loss, and the inevitable reinvention that life demanded. In small towns across America, like Mayberry of The Andy Griffith Show, or the sleepy main streets of countless Hallmark movies, pharmacies, and soda fountains doubled as early social networks. But few of those fictional yarns capture the tactile details, the way the bell over the door jingles at precisely 7 decibels when you step inside, the faint hum of the ice shaving machine behind the counter, the methodical tick of the pharmacist's scale measuring out pink Pepto-Bismol tablets. These are the threads that weave viewers into a sense of place. For an American audience, Oakage is both familiar and charmingly foreign, a reminder of a simpler era when community life revolved around shared spaces rather than screens. Geraldine's upbringing was also framed by the archetypal figures of her parents. Her father, Richard, was the classic small-town pillar, reliable, sturdier man whose handshake felt like a promise and whose laugh could light up the shadows. He ran the pharmacy not just as a business, but as a communal hearth, leveraging every prescription sale into an opportunity to connect. When Geraldine announced her college acceptance, it wasn't merely a proud parental moment, it was a town-wide celebration. And Richard made sure every neighbor knew his daughter's name would soon grace the University of Vermont. Her mother, Eleanor Harrington, embodied vulnerability and quiet courage. Prone to severe migraines that rendered her nearly blind to the world, she retreated behind blackout curtains for days, slipping away from conversation and sunshine. Yet even in her fragility, she taught Geraldine compassion on a deeper level. Tending to her mother's needs, drawing the shades, adjusting the bedside lamp, bringing ice packs to her forehead. Geraldine learned that strength sometimes means showing up when the stronger person cannot. This maternal fragility, juxtaposed with Richard's rock-solid presence, etched itself into Geraldine's soul. She would grow up knowing that caregiving is an art and empathy is the finest medicine. That duality, pillar and patient, healer and healed, set the stage for Geraldine's later journey. When James vanished and she eventually reinvented herself in Boston, she drew upon her father's steadfastness to rebuild a new life, and upon her mother's delicate empathy to nurture others in her nursing career. Those early lessons in Oakage became the scaffolding of her adult self, a blend of can-do grit and gentle understanding. It's easy to romanticize small-town life as an endless idyll of friendly faces, but every setting carries its own contradictions. The very intimacy that made Oakage comforting could also feel claustrophobic. When Geraldine's mother fell ill, whispers spread like wildfire. Did Eleanor's headaches hint at something more sinister? When James disappeared, the same townsfolk who once popped in for a soda to gossip now offered pitiful glances and hushed theories about why Miss Jerry was left at the altar. In communities where privacy is scarce, sympathy can morph into unsolicited advice or invasive curiosity. Herein lies a common pitfall often missed when storytellers depict intimate settings: confusion between wholesomeness and censorship. A small town can be a place of unwavering support or a pressure cooker of judgment. In Geraldine's case, that environment accelerated her initial heartbreak, but also propelled her eventual escape to Boston, where anonymity offered renewal. When you craft your own stories, whether for YouTube or a dinner party, remember to acknowledge both sides of intimacy. Don't shy away from the darker undercurrents, the rumors, the loneliness, the burden of communal expectations. Those nuances resonate with anyone who's ever worn a familiar name in an unfamiliar place and felt the relief of vanishing into a crowd. As modern creators, we can draw from Oakage's blueprint to deepen our own character portrayals. If you're introducing your audience to a hometown or family background, consider these tips. Layer sensory details beyond sight and sound, evoke smell and touch. Describe the soap scent in the pharmacy sink, the cool weight of an ice-cold glass Coke, the gritty feel of linoleum under bare feet. Highlight contradictory impulses, the safety of routine versus the itch for adventure, the warmth of recognition versus the sting of scrutiny. Use archetypes with a twist, the dependable father figure who secretly harbors regrets, the ailing mother whose fragility masks fierce inner strength. Show the cost of community. Not everyone thrives under the same roof. Sometimes the roof must be left behind. By painting Oakage in full colour, we set the emotional stakes for every twist to come. When James arrives with sunburned cheeks and a scar above his brow, you'll already feel how fragile and precious Geraldine's world is. When the pharmacy door jingles behind him, you'll sense the weight of her father's unspoken approval and the echo of her mother's quiet prayers. And when she steps outside that door after her shift heart-pounding dream in her pocket, you'll understand the profound leap she's making from the known into the unknown. Oakage wasn't just a backdrop. It was a crucible where Geraldine's empathy, resolve, and longing for something more were forged. That small-town heartbeat would pulse through every later chapter. Her reinvention in Boston, her second love with Dr. Whitaker, her decades of service as a nurse, and finally her stunned awe on that porch in 2013. Every time she opened a jar of cough drops or arranged chocolate bars at the checkout, she was reliving Oakage. And in that shared memory lies a powerful lesson for us all. Your roots shape you, even if you grow far beyond them. The summer of 1965 in Oakage began like any other heat waves shimmering on asphalt. The hum of cicadas in the fields and the steady clink of glass soda bottles in Harrington's pharmacy. But for Geraldine May Harrington, a freshly minted 18-year-old with college dreams in her heart, everything changed the moment she looked up from the cash register and saw James Calloway step through the door. 1. The anatomy of a first meeting. Most meet-cute stories get boiled down to cliches, bumping into each other, spilled coffee, a witty one-liner. But James and Geraldine's encounter was rich with sensory detail and genuine awkwardness, the twin engines of authenticity. Sensory sparks. He was bright red from sunburn, with peeling cheeks that contrasted sharply against his white shirt and khaki pants. The pink calamine lotion she offered smelled faintly of menthol, and when she dabbed it on his nose, he flinched at the cool touch. That moment, her hand against his skin crackled with teenaged electricity, dialogue as character, rather than a contrived quip. James's first words, "I'm afraid I'm red as a lobster and twice as cooked," felt earnest and vulnerable. Geraldine's response, light teasing about underestimating the Vermont sun, revealed her quick wit and kindness. Common pitfall. Many storytellers overwrite first meetings with cheesy banter or over-the-top scenarios. Instead, focus on tiny, believable details, a nervous laugh, a dropped notebook, or the scent of someone's shampoo. These micro-moments make viewers lean in and say, "Yes, that feels real." 2. Rituals of rising romance. After that first encounter, James found every excuse to return to the pharmacy, a blister on his hand needing ointment, a craving for an ice-cold Coca-Cola bandages for a scraped knee. Each stop created a ritual, a tiny chapter in their unfolding romance. Milkshake Tuesdays. Every Tuesday evening, James would show up just as Geraldine was closing the soda fountain. He'd order a vanilla malt topped with whipped cream and a cherry. In those booth seats by the window, they shared stories, his southern childhood, her small-town dreams. Firefly Ridge sunsets. They discovered a grassy overlook 20 minutes outside of town, where the sunset painted the sky in gold and crimson. There, James strummed a battered guitar, and Geraldine listened, memorizing the pauses between chords as if they were secret messages. Comparative analysis. Think of classic American summer romances. Danny and Sandy in Grease, or Ally and Noah in The Notebook. While those tales thrive on grand gestures, Geraldine and James's story is built on simple, repeatable interactions. YouTube creators can learn from this instead of staging elaborate scenes. Show your audience the small rituals, your morning coffee routine, your late-night writing sessions that carry emotional weight over time. Lesson for viewers. If you're telling your own love story on camera, identify your ritual moments. Maybe it's the way you and your partner always dance around making dinner, or the nightly phone call you can't skip. Lean into those patterns, they humanize your bond. 3. The proposal. From sparks to commitment. After 3 blissful weeks of soft glances and shared laughter, James's visits reached a crescendo one perfect late August evening. They'd driven to Firefly Ridge as usual, but something felt different in the air. An unspoken gravity that made Geraldine's stomach flutter. Building tension. Instead of sitting on the blanket, James paced. She teased him. "You look like you're about to audition for a play." But her voice quivered. When he finally knelt on one knee, Geraldine felt time stretch. The sky's pink-gold glow framed him like a spotlight. Symbolic ring. He presented her with his grandmother's diamond ring, its yellow-gold band worn soft by years of family stories. She said, "Save it for a girl who makes me feel like I could fly," he said. That line, unexpected poetic, gave viewers a crystal-clear window into James's sincerity. Common pitfall. In many videos, proposals get rushed or staged for show. Instead, slow down. Highlight the moments in between the hitch in a voice, the catch of breath, the scuff of shoes on grass. Those pauses are where emotion lives. Practical takeaway. If you plan to film a proposal or any big reveal, prep your camera angle, but let the moment unfold naturally. Encourage real reactions. Laughing tears are better than perfect smiles. 4. Psychology of first love. What made Geraldine and James's bond endure, even after tragedy, wasn't just chemistry. It was shared vulnerability. Mutual dependency. Geraldine was about to leave for college. James was a summer visitor with an uncertain future. Each saw in the other both a mirror and a mystery, her stability and his adventure. That blend created emotional interdependence, a hallmark of enduring first loves. Scarcity and surprise. They had only a short time together, and that ticking clock fueled urgency. They knew August would end, and with it James's construction job and their daily soda fountain meetups. Psychologists call this the scarcity principle. When time feels limited, every interaction gains intensity. Comparative case. Think of long-distance relationships today. We've all seen TikTokers who date across borders, whose FaceTime goodnights carry the same weight as Geraldine's milkshake dates. The technology has changed, but the longing and the rituals remain the same. Lesson for creators. Harness the power of limited time. If you're sharing a travel vlog or a week-long challenge, remind viewers of the countdown. It makes each scene feel more poignant, more urgent. 5. Weaving authenticity and drama. In retelling any romance, there's a fine line between romanticizing every moment and glossing over the hard parts. Geraldine and James's summer wasn't all starlit kisses. There were scrapes, sunburns, and nervous stutters. Those imperfections made their love credible. Embrace the flaws. Show blistered hands, peeling skin, and the awkward pause when neither knows what to say. These aren't distractions, they're character-building moments. Balance pacing. Intercut. Fast-moving sequences like their first date at the movie theater with slow, reflective beats. her stirring cherry Coke syrup alone afterward. The ebb and flow keeps viewers engaged without emotional whiplash. Common mistake. Many creators fall into info dump traps, rattling off dates and facts. Instead, lead with emotion and reveal context through dialogue and action. Let viewers feel Geraldine's racing heartbeat rather than telling them her heart raced. 6. Tips for telling your own summer love story. Start with a hook. A single line. The day I met him, the air smelled like gasoline and cherry syrup. Can transport viewers immediately. Identify your symbols. Whether it's a shared song, a favorite snack, or a particular park bench, anchor your narrative in tangible objects. Use consistent motifs. Geraldine and James return to Firefly Ridge every week. Find your version of that place and return to it on camera. It gives structure and emotional checkpoints. Honor the silence. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen off camera. The look that passes between you when you think the mic is off. You don't need to capture every detail. Leave room for the audience's imagination. By weaving these elements together, sensory detail, authentic dialogue, emotional scarcity, and balanced pacing, you turn a simple summer romance into an immersive narrative that resonates long after the screen goes dark. Geraldine and James's story reminds us that love isn't just fireworks and grand gestures. It's the small, repeated rituals that etch themselves into our memories. As August gave way to September that year, Geraldine walked back into the pharmacy with a new light in her eyes, an excitement tempered by the knowledge that every moment with James mattered more because it wouldn't last forever. Yet none of them had any idea that the real test, the one that would stretch her heart across decades and continents, lay just around the corner. That late summer evening on Firefly Ridge should have been the start of forever. Instead, it became the beginning of a mystery that would haunt Geraldine for decades and transform the very fabric of her life. When James slipped away in his uncle's old truck at first light on the morning of September 1st, 1965, the world seemed unchanged. The hills still rolled in gentle green waves, the crisp air still smelled of pine and dew. But by midday, Geraldine's father was pacing the pharmacy floor, ringing every phone in oakage confusion lining his face. When there was no call from Richmond, and no sign of James at the construction site, alarm set in. The initial search community mobilizes. In small towns, news travels fast. By afternoon, neighbors converged at the Harrington home, offering to help search. Sheriff Miller organized volunteers into teams. One combed the winding roads to the Virginia border. Another fanned through the woods where the creek ran deep and the undergrowth tangled around your ankles. Children were sent to bed early so grown-ups could focus. Church bells rang that evening in prayer rather than celebration. Every find, a discarded shoe, a scrap of paper, a crimson stain by the creek, sent hearts racing only to collapse when nothing more materialized. Geraldine paced the edge of the search parties, listening to hushed theories, maybe a flat tire, a wrong turn, a fender bender. But by dusk, the only trace of James was the slight smear of blood on the driver's door and a single footprint in the mud. Law enforcement steps in the limits of small-town policing. For Sheriff Miller, a kindly man with years of experience but few resources, this case stretched the department's limits. He requested help from the state police, who sent detectives from Montpelier to review the scene. They dusted for fingerprints, measured tire tracks, and registered the car as potential evidence rather than abandoned property. Yet with no witnesses and no CCTV in 1965, their leads ran dry by week's end. It was a common pitfall in rural investigations' jurisdictional gaps. The local sheriff's office handled initial calls, but more specialized inquiry, fingerprinting, forensic analysis fell to state authorities. Coordination required phone calls, written requests, and travel over back roads. Precious time slipped away as agencies passed responsibility, each assuming the other would take the next step. Enter the FBI Cold War era procedures. After 3 weeks of fruitless searching, a federal agent set up a makeshift desk in Oak Ridge's town hall. Agent Donovan was a no-nonsense man with a weary expression accustomed to civil rights cases and espionage files more than missing persons reports. He interviewed everyone who knew James. His high school friends, the gas station attendants on Route 7, even the diner waitress who remembered his hometown accent. In that summer of '65, FBI protocols required detailed interviews and paper files. Donovan's team sent telegrams to neighboring states and filed teletype bulletins to share James's description with law enforcement partners across New England. Yet for all their formal procedures, standardized questionnaires, mugshot lineups, polygraph examinations, there remained a yawning hole in evidence. Real-world parallel. Look at the Maura Murray case of 2004. A nursing student car crash in New Hampshire sparked an intense manhunt, yet miscommunication between state and local agencies hampered timely follow-up. Or consider Natalie Holloway in 2005. Despite media attention, the absence of clear forensic leads stalled the investigation. In every rural disappearance, the lack of immediate centralized coordination creates a vacuum that rumors rush to fill. Small-town whispers sympathy or scrutiny. As weeks turned to months, Oak Ridge's sympathy curdled into speculation. At Harrington's pharmacy, regular customers asked in low tones, "Do you think he ran off?" Or, "Maybe he found someone else." Well-meaning villagers halted Geraldine on the street with awkward condolences as if she were a widow at a wake. Each whispered suggestion cut like a shard of glass. Here lies a storyteller's ethical crossroads. How do you depict the town's need for answers without turning neighbors into caricatures of gossipy small-town scolds? The answer is nuance. Show a mother trembling with concern as she hands Geraldine a casserole. Let a mechanic sheepishly admit he saw a car matching James's at a service station, but thought nothing of it at the time. Humanize everyone. Villagers, officers, volunteers. So viewers understand that even misdirected sympathy springs from love and fear rather than malice. The John Doe mishap, forensic failures. In reviewing the case file 2 years later, Agent Donovan's successor discovered a critical oversight. A young man with severe head trauma had been admitted to a West Virginia hospital the day after James vanished. Listed as John Doe, he lingered unconscious for 3 days before passing away. His body was cremated when no one claimed him. That John Doe might have been James, but the West Virginia hospital never connected their file to Oak Ridge's missing person report. No teletype message crossed state lines, and the coroner's office lacked the photos or dental records needed for a match. This is a forensic failure common in mid-century investigations, when interstate communication relied on postal mail and phone calls, and record-keeping was often paper-based and siloed. Lesson for viewers. Whether you're weaving a mystery for your own channel or simply recounting a real event, avoid info dump on failures. Instead, dramatize this gap, show a file stamped unidentified, the haunting ambiguity of a name unspoken. Then cut to a missing person poster reading James Calloway, and let viewers feel the sorrow of what might have been. Ethical storytelling balancing fact and speculation. By this point, an empathetic narrator must tread carefully. It's tempting to fill gaps with your own theories. Maybe James was kidnapped, maybe he chose to vanish, maybe the town guards hid a darker secret. But honest storytelling respects uncertainty. When evidence is thin, use conditional phrasing, investigators theorized. Some believed there was a possibility. You can also enrich the narrative with historical context. Explain that in 1965, Technological limitations meant no DNA, no digital databases, no ubiquitous cameras. Compare it to today's Amber Alerts or social media sleuths who can cross-reference license plate sightings in real time. This contrast underscores both progress and the sense of helplessness that gripped Geraldine when she first learned how hard it was to find an adult with no known address. Emotional toll and character development. As the official search petered out, the personal investigation began. Geraldine pored over every scrap of paper, police reports, medical logs, letters from James's parents. She wrote weekly to the FBI office in Richmond and phoned Sheriff Miller monthly for updates that never came. Each unanswered call chipped away at her resolve, but also steeled her character. Here, viewers see how mystery shapes personality. In Geraldine's case, the lack of closure propelled her west to Boston in search of anonymity. She swapped Oakage's watchful eyes for the bustle of Harvard Square, where she became a bookstore clerk and eventually a nurse. That reinvention, sparked by a cold case, would set the stage for her second chapter of love and service. Common pitfalls for content creators. Overloading with dates and details. Too many numbers can numb an audience. Instead, choose 3 or 4 pivotal dates. James's arrival, the disappearance, the FBI's arrival, and the John Doe discovery, and build emotional beats around them. Ignoring context. Viewers need to understand why investigations stalled. Briefly highlight mid-1960s forensics, but don't launch into a mini-lecture. A line or two suffices. In an era before DNA or digital records, detectives relied on pig paper files and telegrams, demonizing participants. Even flawed officers deserve nuanced portrayal. Show Sheriff Miller's frustration at bureaucratic red tape and Agent Donovan's empathy in listening to Geraldine recount their last call. Humanize them. Avoid one-dimensional villains. Moving forward, the unfinished chapter. As the sun set on Oakage each day in 1966, Geraldine learned to navigate the space between hope and resignation. She stored James's old letters in a wooden box, each envelope a bittersweet reminder of promises unkept. Her tears stained the ink in places. Her hands smoothed the paper as if she could will the years back into motion. And yet, despite every investigative misstep and every whisper of doubt, Geraldine held on to one unshakable truth. Love had been her guiding star. She believed in every fiber of her being that if anyone could follow the fractured trail, it would be the woman who waited under Vermont skies. When the package from Guadalajara arrived on a brisk April morning in 2013, Geraldine Whitaker, now 71 years old, had long since built a life that felt both full and unfinished. She'd raised a daughter, cared for patients as a nurse, fallen in love a second time, and weathered the loss of her husband. Yet beneath every joy lay the question that haunted her since 1965. What happened to James as she sliced through the layers of brown paper and tape on her porch in Massachusetts? Memories washed over her Firefly Ridge cherry coke rituals, that proposal under the pink and gold sky. Inside the package lay a hand-carved wooden box, worn at the edges by years of handling. With trembling fingers, she lifted the lid. The letter that rewrote a life. In the box, on top of a bed of yellowed cotton batting, rested a thin, yellowed envelope, and beneath it, a small, leather-bound journal. The envelope bore a shaky script she recognized instantly. "My dearest Mary." That nickname, used only between them in his earliest letters, made her heart catch. Inside was a letter dated Guadalajara, January 4th, 1998. Its first lines read, "If you're reading this, I have finally passed from this world, and my friend Manuel has kept his promise to send these to you. I have lived many lives since I last saw you, but my heart never forgot our summer in Vermont." With each word, Geraldine felt as if James were speaking across time. He described how after the crash he'd woken in a Mexican village with no memory of his past. They called me Miguel at first, he wrote. He recounted learning Spanish, marrying, fathering 3 sons, and never once knowing who he had been, until fragments of memory. Her laugh, the jingle of the pharmacy bell, returned in dreams. He apologized for the pain his disappearance caused, and enclosed the journal of memories he'd written, as they came back page by page over decades. Real-world parallel. This revelation echoes the story of Benjamin Kyle, the American John Doe, who after years of amnesia pieced together his identity through DNA testing and public appeals. Both James and Benjamin remind us that memory is fragile, identity porous, and yet the human heart can preserve love even when the past is lost. Reading the journal. Piecing together 2 lives over the next 3 days, Geraldine sat on her porch, reading James's journal. Each entry began, "Hesitantly, I remember," or, "It came back to me as I held your letters and grew more confident as his narrative strengthened." He sketched her face with a carpenter's eye for detail, the way her hair caught sunlight, the curve of her smile. He dated each fragment June 18th, 1965. First time I saw you laugh. August 27th, 1965. The night I asked you to marry me. As she read, Geraldine wept and laughed in equal measure. The man she'd thought lost was alive in those pages, his voice imbued with both regret and gratitude. Yet she also felt the weight of years spent apart, of life chapters written separately. The promises they'd made marriage in June 1966, building a home together, had been overtaken by fate. Lesson for viewers. When sharing personal revelations, balance emotion with context. Show your audience the tangible artifacts, photos, letters, sketches, so they grasp the lived reality behind the words. This deepens empathy and makes abstract ideas concrete. The choice not to reunite. In a closing postscript, James wrote that he'd considered coming back to her after his memory returned, hiring a lawyer, reclaiming his old life, but decided against it. He wrote, "By the time I remembered you had built a new life, I couldn't bear the thought of disrupting the family you and Thomas created. I love you still, but I love your peace more." Geraldine folded the letter gently and placed it back in the box. She felt an unexpected calm. He had not abandoned her willfully. He had been lost, and then with compassion, let her live the life she deserved. Ethical reflection. This decision speaks to the delicate balance between personal closure and respect for others' lives. When crafting your own narratives or helping others tell theirs, consider the impact of revelations on all involved. Sometimes true compassion means letting a story rest, universal themes. Love, loss, and transformation. Geraldine's journey illuminates universal truths. Love endures beyond memory. Even when James could not recall his past, the echo of his feelings survived. Modern neuroscience shows that emotional memories are stored differently from factual ones. We may forget details, but not the love itself. Identity is malleable. James became Miguel, Geraldine became Mrs. Whitaker. Yet both remained fundamentally themselves. In a world where we constantly reinvent our online personas, their story reminds us that core values, empathy, care, perseverance, anchor us. Closure is a process, not an event. After 47 years, Geraldine had an ending to James's chapter, but her peace came not from the letter alone, but from her willingness to accept his choice and her own life's richness. Comparative case study. Think of families separated by adoption or immigrations who reunite decades later. The excitement of rediscovery often coexists with grief for the lost years. Successful reunions hinge on honoring both the new life built and the old roots rediscovered. Applying these lessons to your life and content. Document small truths. Whether you're vlogging your morning routine or sharing major announcements, focus on genuine moments. Coffee aroma, laughter between family members, the silence after tears. These are the threads, bitches, that viewers connect with. Respect complexity. Life stories aren't linear. They loop, branch, and circle back. Embrace the messiness. Don't feel compelled to force a neat ending. Your audience will appreciate honesty. Use artifacts wisely. Show old photos, journals, keepsakes, but weave them into the narrative. Let the viewer's imagination fill gaps rather than over-explaining every detail. Encourage empathy, not spectacle. When retelling painful or mysterious events, center human emotions and choices, not just sensational facts. This fosters understanding rather than voyeurism. Call to action. Share your epilogue. I'd love to know, have you ever unearthed a long-buried memory or artifact that changed your understanding of your own story? Maybe a forgotten letter from a friend, a childhood toy rediscovered in your parents' attic, or a social media message that reopened old wounds. Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story of Geraldine and James resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe for more tales of unexpected twists, enduring love, and the courage to keep turning pages, even when the ending feels uncertain. Final reflection. Living with the questions. Geraldine kept James's journal and letter in a cedar box beside her bedside table. Each year, on their would-be anniversary, she reads a single page, sometimes the first, sometimes a fragment from their early days. The rest of life's pages filled themselves. Her daughter's laughter, her grandchildren's footsteps, the tide's ebb and flow against the Massachusetts shore. She often says, closure isn't crossing a finish line. It's knowing how to run with your heart split between what was and what is. And in that wisdom lies the richest lesson of all, that every love story, no matter how it begins or ends, transforms us, and that transformation is the enduring legacy we carry forward. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you find your own way to honor past loves and embrace new beginnings, carrying both in your heart with gentleness and grace.